My wife insisted my mom couldn't join our honeymoon, but she did anyway, and now everything's falling apart and Ava and I had been looking forward to our honeymoon ever since the engagement. After months of wedding stress, the idea of a week in a luxury resort in the Caribbean felt like the light at the end of the tunnel. It was supposed to be our perfect escape, just the two of us, disconnected from the world, basking in newlywed bliss. Then, my mom dropped the bomb. It was a sunny Sunday afternoon. Ava was in the bedroom finalizing her packing while I sat on the couch scrolling through honeymoon travel blogs. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Sophia but she insists I call her Mom because Sophia sounds old. Her message was simple. Guess what? I booked a suite at your resort. Can't wait for us to spend some quality time together. Smiling face with smiling eye. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe she was joking, or she mixed up resorts. I called her immediately, already feeling the first twinges of panic. Hey, Mom, what's this about booking a suite? At my honeymoon resort? I tried to keep my voice calm, but it came out strained. Oh, sweetie, isn't it exciting? She gushed, like she just announced a surprise birthday party. I've been meaning to take a vacation, and when you mentioned where you were going, I thought, why not? I'll have my own room, of course, but we can do some fun activities together. Snorkeling, dinners. Doesn't it sound perfect? Perfect? Not even close. My stomach dropped as I struggled to find the words. Mom, it's our honeymoon. Ava and I were looking forward to some alone time. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Noah, she replied, brushing me off like I was overreacting. I won't be in your way. It's a big resort. Besides, family time is just as important as couple time. By the time I hung up, my hands were shaking. Ava walked in, suitcase in hand, and took one look at me before asking, what's wrong? When I explained, her face went through 3 stages: shock, disbelief, and finally, anger. She booked a suite? At our resort? On our honeymoon? I nodded, wincing. She says she won't be in our way. Oh, come on, Noah. She'll be in our way every second she can. How could she think this is okay? Ava's voice was rising, and I knew we were teetering dangerously close to a full-blown argument. Look, I'll talk to her again. Maybe I can convince her to cancel, I said, trying to sound confident. Convince her? Ava snapped. You're her son, Noah. Just tell her. You shouldn't have to convince her not to crash our honeymoon. The thing is, it wasn't that simple. My mom has always had a way of getting what she wants. She's charming, manipulative, and somehow always makes me feel guilty when I try to stand up to her. Growing up, she used to call me her little man, the one who would always take care of her. Now, at 28, I was starting to wonder if I'd ever stopped being her little man. I spent the next few days trying to reason with her, but every conversation went the same way. You're overthinking this, she'd say. It'll be fun. Trust me. Ava was furious that I hadn't put my foot down harder. I couldn't blame her. It was our honeymoon, and it was already starting to feel less like a romantic getaway and more like a family vacation. The day of our flight, Mom showed up at the airport with a suitcase bigger than both of ours combined. She waved cheerfully and greeted Ava with an overly enthusiastic hug. I'm so excited for this trip. The 3 of us are going to have such a blast. Ava forced a smile, but I could tell by the way she clutched my hand that she was seething. On the plane, Mom insisted on sitting between us, despite us having booked seats together. It's just for the takeoff, she said. I get nervous flying, and I feel safer next to Noah. Ava glared at me as I swapped seats with her, but what was I supposed to do? By the time we landed, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The resort itself was breathtaking. White sand beaches, turquoise water, lush gardens. For a moment, I let myself believe things would get better. But then, Mom started making plans. Let's all have dinner together tonight, she suggested, not bothering to ask if Ava and I already had plans. And tomorrow, we can book a group excursion. Oh, I saw this great couples massage package. Maybe we can all do it together. I glanced at Ava, who was staring at me like she was daring me to say something. Mom, this is supposed to be our time to relax. I began carefully. Oh, Don't worry, honey, she said, waving me off. You'll have plenty of time to relax. But don't forget, we're family. And family sticks together. Ava didn't speak to me for the rest of the evening. I spent the night tossing and turning, replaying the day over and over. Ava had a point. I needed to stand up to my mom. But how? She had this way of making me feel like the bad guy for even trying to set boundaries. And as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought Ava had left the resort entirely. But then I spotted her sandals by the door and heard the faint sound of waves through the balcony. I found her sitting on the beach, her knees drawn to her chest, staring out at the water. Ava, I called gently, walking up behind her. She didn't turn around. Is this how it's going to be? She asked, her voice flat. Your mom takes over everything, and you just let it happen? I sank into the sand beside her. It's not like that. I didn't know how to stop her. She turned to me then, her green eyes sharp with frustration. You didn't even try, Noah. You keep saying you'll talk to her, but nothing changes. Do you realize how humiliating this is? She's treating our honeymoon like some family retreat, and you're letting her. Her words stung, but I knew she was right. I'll fix it, I promised, though the words felt hollow even as I said them. Fix it how? Ava asked, her tone softer now, but still tinged with disappointment. Are you really going to tell her to leave? Or are you just going to keep making excuses? I didn't have an answer. We tried to make the most of the day. Ava and I went snorkeling in the morning and had a quiet lunch by the pool. For a few hours, it almost felt like the honeymoon we'd imagined. But then Sophia found us. There you two are, she exclaimed, striding over in a brightly colored sundress and a floppy hat. I've been looking all over for you. Ava clenched her jaw, but I forced a smile. Hey, Mom. What's up? I just spoke to this lovely young man at the concierge desk, Jack, I think his name was, and he told me about this incredible sunset cruise. I booked us 3 tickets. 3? Ava asked, her voice tight. Well, of course. Mom replied, looking genuinely baffled. It's a couple's cruise. How could I leave you two out? Ava stood up so abruptly that her chair toppled over. I need to go, she muttered, storming off before I could stop her. What's her problem? Mom asked, frowning. Mom, I began, struggling to keep my frustration in check. You're not giving us any space. This is supposed to be our honeymoon. Ava's upset because... Oh, don't start with that again, she interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. I'm not bothering anyone. Honestly, Noah, you're being ridiculous. Ava needs to lighten up. Before I could respond, she changed the subject. Now, about the cruise, it's at 6, so don't be late. That evening, Ava refused to go on the cruise. I'm not spending another minute with her, she said, her voice shaking with anger. If you want to go, fine. But I'm staying here. I wanted to stay with Ava, but I knew if I skipped the cruise, Mom would throw a fit. And so, against my better judgment, I went. The cruise was awkward from the start. Couples lounged on the deck, sipping champagne and snuggling under the setting sun. Meanwhile, Mom and I sat stiffly at a small table, drawing curious glances from the other passengers. This is nice, isn't it? Mom said, sipping her drink. Just you and me, spending quality time together. I stared at her, incredulous. Do you even realize how much you're ruining this trip? Her smile faltered. Ruining? Don't be so dramatic, Noah. I'm just trying to have fun with my son. Mom, this isn't about fun. This is about you not respecting boundaries. Ava and I needed this time alone, and you've made it impossible. Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw a flash of something other than cheerfulness. I can't believe you're talking to me like this. After everything I've done for you, you're acting like I'm some kind of burden. I sighed, rubbing my temples. That's not what I'm saying. I need you to understand that this is important to us. She didn't reply. For the rest of the cruise, she barely spoke to me, her lips pressed into a thin line. When I returned to the resort, Ava was already asleep, or pretending to be. I crawled into bed, my head spinning. I'd stood up to Mom, but it hadn't made anything better. If anything, it felt like I just made things worse. The next few days were a blur of tension. Mom continued to insert herself into everything we did, from breakfast to excursions. Ava grew more distant, her smiles rare and forced, and I felt stuck in the middle, torn between the woman I loved and the mother who refused to let go. Things came to a head during dinner one evening. We were at the resort's upscale restaurant, Ava and I sitting across from Mom. The conversation was stilted, each of us barely touching our food. Then, out of nowhere, Mom announced, "I've decided to extend my stay." Ava froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "What?" "I've been having such a wonderful time," Mom said, oblivious to the tension. I figured, why not stay another week? Jack, he's that sweet concierge I mentioned, helped me arrange it. Ava set her fork down slowly, her expression unreadable. "Excuse me," she said, standing up and walking away without another word. "Mom," I said, my voice low and furious. "Why would you do that? You know how upset Ava is, and you're just making it worse." "She'll get over it," Mom said, waving a hand dismissively. "Honestly, Noah, she's being so dramatic. Marriage is about compromise, and she needs to learn that." "No, Mom," I snapped, my voice rising. "Marriage is about respect. Something you clearly don't understand." She recoiled, looking genuinely hurt. "I can't believe you'd say that to me. After everything I've done for you, raising you on my own, sacrificing so much, you're choosing her over me?" I felt the weight of her words, the guilt she always knew how to wield. But this time, I didn't let it control me. "Yes, Mom," I said firmly. "I'm choosing her. And if you can't respect that, maybe you shouldn't be here at all." For a moment, she just stared at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Then she stood up and walked away, leaving me alone at the table. When I returned to our room, Ava was sitting on the bed, her arms crossed. "Well?" she asked. "I told her," I said, sinking into the chair across from her. "I told her she needs to leave." Ava's expression softened, but there was still a trace of doubt in her eyes. "Do you think she will?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'm done letting her control everything. I promise, Ava, I'll fix this, no matter what it takes." She nodded, and for the first time in days, she smiled. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The morning after my confrontation with Mom, I woke up feeling cautiously optimistic. She hadn't spoken to me since storming off the night before, but I hoped that maybe, just maybe, she'd take what I said to heart. Ava seemed lighter too. We spent the morning lounging by the pool, sipping cocktails and talking about the excursions we wanted to do. Asterisk asterisk, just the two of us. Asterisk asterisk, for the first time since arriving, it felt like we were actually on our honeymoon. Then, around lunchtime, I saw her. Mom was sitting at the poolside bar, laughing with a familiar-looking man. As I got closer, I realized it was Jack, the concierge she'd been raving about. He was leaning in, hanging on her every word, his smile a little too friendly. Ava noticed them too. "Isn't that the guy who booked her extra week?" she asked, her tone icy. "Yeah," I muttered, my stomach tightening. Something about their interaction felt off. Later that afternoon, Ava and I decided to take a paddleboarding lesson. It was just the distraction we needed, a chance to laugh at each other's terrible balance and forget about the tension. But when we returned to the beach, Mom was waiting for us. "Noah," she called, waving enthusiastically. Jack was with her again, carrying a tray of drinks. Ava sighed loudly. "Are you kidding me?" I forced a smile and walked over, Ava reluctantly trailing behind. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "What's going on?" "Oh, nothing much," she said, handing me a drink. "Jack was just telling me about this incredible private beach the resort owns. I thought it would be fun for all of us to check it out." Jack grinned. "It's a hidden gem. Hardly anyone knows about it, but the sunsets there are unreal. I can book you guys a trip if you're interested." I glanced at Ava, who looked like she was barely holding back a string of expletives. "Thanks, but I think we'll pass," I said quickly. "Oh, come on," Mom protested. "Don't be such a stick in the mud. Noah, it'll be an adventure. It's our honeymoon, Mom, I reminded her. We're here to relax. Her smile faltered, but Jack quickly stepped in. No pressure, he said, his voice smooth. Just let me know if you change your mind. He gave Mom a lingering look before walking away, and I couldn't help but notice the way she watched him go. That evening, Ava and I were getting ready for dinner when she suddenly spoke up. I don't trust him, she said, her tone serious. Who? Jack, she said, crossing her arms. He's way too involved with your mom. And what kind of concierge spends this much time with a guest? I shrugged. Maybe he's just being friendly. Mom has a way of pulling people in. Ava raised an eyebrow. You don't think it's weird that she's been glued to his side ever since we got here? He's helping her extend her stay, booking private trips for her. What's next? Breakfast in bed. I opened my mouth to argue but stopped. She wasn't wrong. There was something strange about their dynamic, and the more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. The next day, while Ava was at the spa, I decided to do a little investigating. I went to the concierge desk, hoping to catch Jack alone, but he wasn't there. Instead, I found another staff member, a young woman named Emma. Hi, I said, trying to sound casual. I was looking for Jack. Do you know where he is? She hesitated, glancing around nervously. He's probably with a guest, she said, her voice tight. Is that normal? I asked, leaning in slightly. For him to spend so much time with one guest? Her eyes darted toward the manager's office, and she lowered her voice. Not really, but Jack does what he wants. Let's just say he has a history of getting too involved with certain guests. I frowned. What do you mean? Emma hesitated, clearly debating whether to say more. Finally, she leaned in and whispered, he's been in trouble before. A few guests have complained about him crossing boundaries, getting too personal, making them uncomfortable. But the manager never does anything about it because Jack's one of our top performers. My stomach churned. Thanks, I said, my mind racing as I walked away. That evening, Ava and I had dinner at a quiet restaurant on the beach. I told her what Emma had said, and her reaction was immediate. I knew it, she said, stabbing her fork into her salad. He's sketchy, and your mom's practically throwing herself at him. Don't, I said, shaking my head. That's my mom you're talking about. Ava sighed, her expression softening. I'm sorry, but you have to admit this is getting out of hand. She's not just here to spend time with you, Noah. Something else is going on. She was right, but I wasn't ready to admit it. Not yet. The next day, I decided to confront Mom directly. I found her by the pool, sipping a margarita and chatting with, you guessed it, Jack. Mom, I said, my voice firmer than usual. We need to talk. Alone. She looked annoyed but followed me to a quieter spot. What's so urgent? She asked, crossing her arms. I want to know what's really going on, I said, my voice low. Why did you follow us here? And what's with you and Jack? Her expression shifted, a flicker of guilt crossing her face before she quickly masked it with indignation. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. Mom, don't lie to me, I said, my patience wearing thin. You've been acting strange ever since we got here. Just tell me the truth. She hesitated, her eyes darting away. Fine, she said finally. I came here because I didn't want to be alone. I frowned. What do you mean? She sighed, looking genuinely vulnerable for the first time. I've been feeling lost lately. You're married now, and I don't know what my place is in your life anymore. I thought if I came here, I could hold on to that connection. I didn't realize it would cause so much tension. Her words hit me harder than I expected. It was the closest she'd ever come to admitting her insecurities, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. But then I remembered Jack, the extended stay, the constant interruptions. That still doesn't explain why you're spending so much time with Jack, I said, narrowing my eyes. Her cheeks flushed. He's just being nice, she said quickly. You're reading too much into it. Was I? Or was Ava right all along? That night, Ava and I were walking back to our room when we passed Mom's suite. The door was slightly ajar, and we could hear voices inside. Mom and Jack. Can't let Noah find out, Mom was saying. I froze, my heart pounding. Ava grabbed my arm, her eyes wide. What the hell? I whispered. She didn't reply, but her grip tightened as we stood there, straining to hear more. I'm telling you, it's fine, Jack said, his tone casual. They'll never know. Before we could hear anything else, the door creaked open. Mom stepped into the hallway, her eyes widening when she saw us. Noah, she said, her voice shaky. What are you doing here? I think the better question is, what are you doing? I said, my voice cold. She glanced over her shoulder, where Jack was standing with a guilty expression. It's not what it looks like, she said quickly. Then explain it, Ava said, her tone sharp. Mom opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time, I realized I might not be ready to hear the truth. The tension in the hallway was suffocating. Mom stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes darting between me and Ava. Behind her, Jack lingered awkwardly, his usually confident demeanor replaced by an almost guilty awkwardness. Mom, I said, my voice hardening. What's going on? Why did you say I can't find out? She opened her mouth to respond, but Jack stepped forward instead, raising his hands like a man trying to calm a stampede. Look, this isn't as bad as it seems, he said, his voice steady but lacking the charm he usually exuded. Oh, really? Ava shot back, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Because it looks like you two are sneaking around and keeping secrets. What could possibly make this not as bad? Jack hesitated, his gaze flicking toward Mom, who gave him a pleading look. Whatever was going on, it was clear they were in this together. Noah, Mom finally said, her voice cracking, I didn't want you to find out like this. I was going to tell you, I swear. It's just complicated. What's complicated? I demanded, my patience wearing thin. What aren't you telling me? She took a deep breath, her hands trembling. Jack's not just a concierge. He's my boyfriend. The words hit me like a slap. My mom, the woman who had been practically glued to my side my entire life, was dating the resort concierge? Your boyfriend? I repeated, as if saying it out loud would make it make sense. Are you serious right now? Yes, she said, her voice soft but resolute. We've been seeing each other for a few months. He works at the resort, and when I found out you were coming here, I thought. She trailed off, avoiding my gaze. You thought what? Ava interjected, crossing her arms. You thought it would be a good idea to crash our honeymoon so you could play house with your boyfriend? It's not like that. Mom insisted, her voice rising. I didn't plan to interfere. I wanted to spend time with you, Noah. And yes, I wanted to see Jack too. But I never meant for things to get so out of hand. I stared at her, struggling to process everything. This wasn't just about her showing up uninvited. She had lied, manipulated, and disrupted the most important trip of my life, all for her own selfish reasons. So what? I said, my voice trembling with anger. You're dating a guy half your age, and you thought it was okay to drag us into it? Did you even think about how this would affect me and Ava? Mom's face crumpled. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. I didn't want to feel alone. Her words tugged at something deep inside me, but I couldn't let myself soften. Not this time. Jack, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. Look, I get it, he said, addressing me directly. This isn't ideal, but Sophia's been through a lot. She's an amazing woman, and she deserves to be happy. I glared at him. You don't get to talk to me about what my mom deserves. You've known her for what, a few months? You don't know anything about her or our family. Jack held up his hands defensively. Fair enough. But I care about her, and I'm not going to apologize for that. Maybe you should, Ava snapped. Because whatever this is, it's completely inappropriate. You're taking advantage of her. I'm not taking advantage of anyone, Jack shot back, his calm demeanor slipping. This is real, whether you like it or not. Ava opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. Enough, I said, my voice cold. This isn't the time or place for this. I turned to Mom, my chest tightening. I can't believe you do this. You lied to me, manipulated me, and ruined our honeymoon. All because you're too selfish to respect boundaries. Do you even realize how much damage you've caused? Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't stop. This has to end, Mom. Now, either you leave, or we do. But I'm done letting you control everything. For a moment, she just stood there, silent and trembling. Then she nodded, her voice barely a whisper. I'll go. Mom left the resort the next morning. She didn't say goodbye, and I didn't try to stop her. Ava and I spent the day trying to salvage what was left of our trip, but the weight of everything that had happened hung over us like a storm cloud. That evening, as we sat on the beach watching the sunset, Ava reached for my hand. You did the right thing, she said softly. Did I? I asked, my voice heavy with doubt. I feel like I just pushed her away. You didn't push her away, Ava said firmly. You set boundaries. That's what she needed, even if she doesn't realize it yet. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed her. 2 days later, I got a text from Mom. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you can forgive me someday. I stared at the message for a long time, torn between anger and guilt. Part of me wanted to reply, to tell her that I understood, that I still loved her. But another part of me was too hurt to reach out. In the end, I didn't respond. The rest of the honeymoon passed uneventfully. Ava and I spent our days exploring the island, swimming in the ocean, and rediscovering the joy we'd lost in the chaos. But even as we laughed and held each other, I couldn't shake the feeling that things would never be the same. I loved my mom, but I couldn't keep letting her overshadow my life. For the first time, I realized that loving someone sometimes meant letting them go. The plane ride home was quiet. Ava leaned against my shoulder, her fingers intertwined with mine, but neither of us said much. I was lost in thought, replaying the events of the past week. My mom leaving the resort, the text she sent, Jack's smug smile as she walked away. All of it churned in my mind like a storm I couldn't escape. When we landed, Ava squeezed my hand. We'll figure it out, she said softly, as if she'd read my mind. The first few days back were a blur of unpacking, laundry, and trying to settle into post-honeymoon life. Ava threw herself into work, but I could tell she was still uneasy, and I couldn't blame her. As much as I wanted to focus on our marriage, the situation with Mom lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. One evening, as we sat on the couch eating takeout, Ava turned to me. Have you heard from her? I shook my head. Just the one text. Nothing since. She hesitated, her fork hovering over her plate. Do you think you'll talk to her? I don't know, I admitted. I'm still angry, but I hate the idea of leaving things like this. Ava nodded, her expression thoughtful. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But I think you need to figure out what kind of relationship you want with her. Not just for now, but for the future. Her words stuck with me. That night, as I lay awake in bed, I thought about my mom, about how she'd raised me on her own, always putting on a brave face even when things were hard. I thought about the times she'd made me laugh, the times she'd been my biggest cheerleader. And I thought about how she'd manipulated and controlled me, using guilt as a weapon to keep me close. Ava was right. I needed to set boundaries, but I also needed to figure out if there was a way forward. The next morning, I called her. She picked up on the second ring. Noah, she said, her voice hesitant. I didn't think I'd hear from you so soon. I almost didn't call, I said honestly. But I've been thinking, and I don't want to lose you, Mom. But things have to change. There was a long pause. I know, she said finally. I've been thinking too, about what you said. And you're right. I crossed a line. I was selfish, and I didn't respect your boundaries. I'm sorry, Noah. Her apology took me by surprise. Mom wasn't someone who apologized easily, and hearing her admit she was wrong felt like a breakthrough. I appreciate that, I said. But it's not just about this one trip. It's about everything. For as long as I can remember, you've made me feel like I owe you something. Like I have to put you first, no matter what. That's not healthy, Mom. For either of us. Her breath hitched, and I wondered if she was crying. I never meant to make you feel that way, she said. I've been on my own for so long, Noah. You're all I have. And when you got married, I felt like I was losing you. You're not losing me, I said firmly. But you have to let me have my own life, my own marriage. That doesn't mean I don't love you, but it does mean I need space. There was another long silence, and then she said, I understand. I'll try, Noah. I promise I'll try. In the weeks that followed, things slowly began to improve. Mom kept her distance, but she also made an effort to show she was listening. She called less frequently, and when she did, she asked about Ava and our life together instead of focusing solely on herself. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Ava noticed the change too. One evening, as we were cooking dinner together, she smiled and said, I think she's actually trying. I think so too, I said, flipping a piece of chicken in the pan. It feels different, healthier. She nodded, then gave me a playful nudge. See? Setting boundaries isn't so bad. I laughed, but deep down, I knew she was right. A few months later, Mom surprised me with a letter. In it, she wrote about how hard it had been to let go, but also how proud she was of me for standing up for myself. She said she was working on her own issues, on finding happiness that didn't depend on me. It was the most honest thing she'd ever given me, and for the first time, I felt a sense of peace. Looking back, the honeymoon wasn't what I'd imagined. It was messy and chaotic, full of fights and revelations I wasn't prepared for. But in a way, it was exactly what we needed. It forced me to confront the unhealthy patterns in my relationship with Mom, and it taught me the importance of putting my marriage first. Ava and I are stronger now because of it. We've learned how to communicate better, how to navigate challenges together. And while there are still bumps along the way, I know we'll face them as a team. As for Mom, she's still a work in progress. But so am I. And for the first time, I feel hopeful about the future for all of us.